Co-Chair of the Digital Classics Association. I want to welcome everyone to the first of a series of DCA panels organized for APA AIA. I want to first thank the APA and AIA for helping put this session together. I want to thank my co-chair, Gregory Crane, and the other members of the DCA Steering Committee. And most importantly, I'd like to thank the DCA membership whose support made today's panel possible. Upcoming DCA events will include next year's APA AI session, Making Meaning from Data, which has an open call for papers, if you're interested. Next spring, the second standalone DCA conference will be hosted by UCLA. And more immediately, you are invited to a modest DCA reception tomorrow from 7:30 to 8:30 in the Columbia University. Today. The title for this workshop is Getting Started with Digital Classics. Since choosing that title, I was informed that it was a cliche. That is to say, people seem to always be getting started with the digital humanities. But I want to give literary facts and try to give life to that topos today in the form of a brief introduction to digital classics and today's panel. I want to start by acknowledging some early work for digital classics, just a selection as all of my items will be today. That is to say, the origins of GIS systems in the 1960s that have become so important to archaeology, the Perseus Project and the database for classical bibliography and their origins in the 80s. With just that nod to the origins of digital classics, let me take the rest of my time today in surveying three different ways in which I would like to argue that digital classics is getting started anew as we speak. And I want to divide this into three categories: foundational resources, infrastructure, and interpretation. And I should say that I'm going to concentrate here on research. Education and outreach in the digital forms will be the subject of later DCA sessions. So those are my three categories. Foundational resources I would define as those which make available in digital form things that were otherwise not for the study of the classical world. And we know these, many of us, fairly well. The Homer Multitext Project and its efforts to digitize various editions of the Homeric text so that they can be compared in all their variations and in the manuscripts. The APA Digital Latin Library Project, which is just getting moving in some ways, which is an effort to encompass all of Latin from antiquity to the present in digital form. The first project we're all probably familiar with, philologic variation, all the texts and tools that it makes available for study. The Open Philology Project, now getting started in Leipzig. They'll offer a range of multi-text, learning environment, and an open scholarship repository. And I mentioned as well the Digital Archaeology Project at the University of Florida, which now allows epigraphists to easily make 3D versions of digital friezes that they can analyze and compare. So that's a selection of what I want to call foundational resources available in the digital realm that are being developed or have been developed as an important part of our digital classical infrastructure. For actual infrastructure, I want to mention two projects that I think provide a link between these kinds of resources and one another. So these two projects are first the Pleiades project, which provides the notion, or has come up with the notion of space, or place, I should say, which has been very important. So every place in the ancient world is being identified by the Pleiades project with a unique identifier. And what that means is that with that unique identifier, you can associate lots of things with that identifier. So an example here from the Pleiades website is a deposit place in the Hadrian's Wall. So we know that as a matter of contemporary archaeology, Hadrian's Wall is made up of a number of sites that are being investigated. Nevertheless, the infrastructure of Pleiades allows us not only the individual sites to be identified as places, but the whole of Hadrian's Wall identified as a composite place. Now, once you do that, once you have these unique identifiers for places, you can associate lots of things with them. With Hadrian's Wall, you can associate images, you can associate places on maps, you can associate textual occurrences with references to Hadrian's Wall, and many other things. And so the idea of this powerful concept of place developed by Pleiades is that you can associate all these pieces of data, this notion of linked data, with one another. So that if you're interested in Hadrian's Wall or linking it back to another place, you can do that identifier. The textual parallel to this, on the subject of infrastructure, place infrastructure is the textual infrastructure developed by Christopher Blackwell and Neil Smith called canonical text service. Again, this is sort of the textual equivalent of the place work that Pleiades is doing, where each locus in each manuscript of each text has a unique identifier. Again, in the case of the Homer Multitext project, this means that you can identify each locus variant uniquely, and then you can compare them and you can work with them. So what you can imagine happening, these are some examples of those identification tags. And here have to do with variants of Homer Iliad 1.26. What you can imagine happening in the future building on this infrastructure is the ability, if you're interested in that locus, to find all the things that are associated with it. Not only every manuscript version, go along with that, every textual variant, but also potentially every secondary scholarship, citation secondary scholarship. All of that is available to you once around that node. Very powerful infrastructure built by these two projects right now, having place and text. The last category after resource infrastructure is interpretation. Here I want to talk about 3 examples quickly. So if we have the text and the images and the places and all that stuff in place, the basic materials, and we have an infrastructure that's linking to it, that helps us move on to the level of interpretation. We can do interpretation just based on those materials. We can also use digital methods to engage in the interpretation itself. So let me give 3 examples of how digital methods are moving into the realm of interpretation. The first comes from our Tesseract project, which is a project meant to discover intertext. It's a free website. It's available now. I want to just highlight a new capacity that we've developed, which is to match words or find intertext, not simply by word forms, where you say animus and animo, or those words match, but by meaning, where you get words that have different forms but have similar meanings. So this is a new search capability available on the website. Right now, we can search cross-linguistically from Homer to Virgil. Here's an example of the Iliad one, a match that comes up, where Dido is asking that she be released from her cares, exalted curis, and that has been matched automatically with the passage describing Achilles being freed from his troubles after the funeral of Patroclus temporarily. And the words you can see matched here, exalted curis and muon demata, are matched by meaning, not by form. So you can start to search by meaning and get into thematic discovery that way. That's one example. The second example of interpretation I take from outside of the world of classics to a psychologist and linguist at Stanford University, Justine Calvin-Jurafsky, did some stylistic work on late 20th century professional and amateur poets, comparing their qualities. And so they determined some things that might seem obvious. The professional poets had a broader vocabulary range. They used more object words and fewer abstract words. They used fewer negative emotional words. And they interestingly used, maybe you expect this, the use of sound devices was more rare in the professional poets than it was in the amateur poets. So rhyming, for example, amateur poets rhymed more often than did the professionals. Now, all of this you could say, well, we kind of do that if you think about modern attempts and style. But what this leads to is comparison of between authors, between works, and between parts of works that are all professional to define stylistic differences. So my last example of interpretation has to do with material culture. I take this from David FREDRICK's work at the University of Arkansas. He is building reconstructions of Roman houses in the Unity game engine. And by doing that, he's able to do things like visibility analysis, where, as in this slide, you can see marked in red those areas of the house that are more visible than those marked in blue from certain perspectives. This allows us to say interesting things about why houses are designed in certain ways, and particularly where objects might be placed so that they can be visible to range of viewers. This is an example of more interpretive work being done in the church. So I did all of that just to say this little survey, very brief thumbnail sketch of some of the things going on in digital classics that allow me to argue that it's getting started anew at this moment. And I want to close by saying, talking about other ways for all of us to get started. So let's assume that you are someone who's interested in digital classics and doesn't have a lot of experience, does not yet have a lot of experience, or interested in more, how can you get started personally? One of the ways to do that is to subscribe to the Digital Classics listserv, follow the work in progress seminars in London, Berlin, Leipzig, come to Digital Humanities conferences, the Chicago area Digital Humanities and Computer Science annual conference. There are hands-on learning opportunities at a number of these kinds of events, the Digital Classics Association standalone conferences. NEH provides seminars from time to time. Leipzig has a series of seminars where you can do hands-on experience. The Digital Humanities Conference itself, that is to say, broader than Digital Classics, there is a big Digital Humanities Conference where you can meet lots of people doing interesting things, and they have hands-on workshops in advance of the conference. Reach out to colleagues in other departments. And finally, for institutional support, I'll end by encouraging us as members of the ATA and AIA to look into maybe having workshops here at these conferences that would help people to learn these skills and get introduced to them. I would also exhort the membership to support increased recognition of digital work in the profession to incentivize this kind of work in the future. So that's my introduction to Digital Classics. I want to now turn to our sessions of the day. And I want to say just a note about time. Each of the presentations has 20 minutes. We'll take 1 or 2 questions after each one and hope to hold a few minutes in reserve at the end for more discussion. I remind you that, again, there is a reception by the Digital Classics Association tomorrow at 7:30 if you talk to the presenters. With that, I introduce to you our first presenter, Diane Klein of Washington University.